Journalists across the world risk their lives daily to bring the latest pictures and stories to an audience which consumes coverage 24/7. Behind them are newsrooms full of people who all work to put out the best content possible on every platform. While they work to look after the audience's needs, who looks after theirs? Hello and welcome to the UTV Vodcast. I'm Carol Jordan. Today I'm joined by Leona O'Neill, a journalist and lecturer at Ulster University, and she's also one of the leading voices in the UK and Ireland advocating for better mental health support in the media industry. Leona is also the founder of Media Strong, an organisation committed to transforming newsroom culture through trauma-informed training, research and policy change. Thanks so much for joining me today, Leona.
Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. So can you tell me, can you explain a little bit about Media Strong? What does it do? What are your goals?
Yeah, so Media Strong revolves around bettering mental health for newsrooms. I set it up a number of years ago. I was a journalist for 25 years here in Northern Ireland. I also work for Al Jazeera and Vice as a field producer. I have a lot of experience in newsrooms, and I saw that they're not terribly great at supporting journalists, I suppose, but they're not a great place to land whenever you've covered really tough jobs. I found that myself, and an incident happened a couple of years back with myself. I witnessed the murder of Leona O'Neill, and I was there that night. I was standing beside her and trying to help, and I was harassed and intimidated afterwards after seeing a very traumatic incident. And I found that after that there was no real support for me as a journalist. It was more a case of you just have to get on with things. And so I started gathering a tribe of people who were interested in the mental health of journalists and who also couldn't get any help in their newsrooms. And we formed a sort of tribe, signposting each other to different things, signposting each other to help, and it kind of grew from there. And we have had 3 years now of conferences in London. This is the third year now, where we're bringing together newsrooms from all over the world to talk about newsroom mental health, to find solutions, to work together, to find a better way to help journalists, to sign people to help, and to just educate ourselves and each other on how the newsroom can impact on our mental health, on our nervous systems, on our minds and our bodies. So it really grew from there, and it's really taken legs on now, and just it's running by itself, so which is great to see.
What are the sort of main findings, I suppose, or what are people and your members telling you?
So the main findings, I'm also doing a PhD in journalism and trauma as well, and the research that I'm doing in that, I'm doing it in newsrooms all over the world. The main thread that is kind of going through all this stuff is that journalists are actually fearful of speaking up about their own mental health, that they have struggled with a story or something has landed on them. They are fearful of speaking those words out in a newsroom, perhaps it does have support or that doesn't have support. The main thing is coming back to them and their mindset and that sort of traditional newsroom culture that doesn't lend itself very well to speaking up about stuff like that. You know, journalists are traditionally, they're hard-nosed, they're supposedly resilient and strong and robust and just get on with it kind of people. They're sent into the worst situations imaginable and they're expected to come out totally unscathed and undamaged, like they're almost superhuman. So if we have this reputation, this traditional mindset and culture in a newsroom, then these people think, well, I can't tell anyone about my vulnerabilities or my struggle with anything, or I'll be taken off a story, or I'll be moved somewhere else, or I won't get any more work. So it's trying to smash that taboo or that mindset or that culture so that people feel free to speak about their struggles or speak about something that has landed on them or speak about something that they're struggling with. And that's half the battle.
I think you're right when you talk about the mindset, breaking that mindset and being hard-nosed, because like you know, I've been a journalist now for over 20 years. I've worked in hostile environments, and I always remember one particular assignment in Baghdad where we used to joke about Dr. Finkelstein, who was actually somebody, he was a psychologist, he was available to us as counsellors, but we almost laughed at the idea of having to go to see him, for any reason. How difficult do you think it is trying to break that mindset?
It is extremely difficult. I have found myself, I've been doing this now for 5-6 years almost. You're pushing against closed doors a lot of the time. A lot of newsroom leaders don't want to know, or they think that the measures that they have in place are sufficient. And when you dig a little deeper, and this is newsrooms all over the world, you dig a little deeper, the journalists themselves tell me that the support that is available isn't perhaps meaningful, or it's meant for someone else and not bespoke to journalists. Journalists are a very unique breed of people. We have a certain language, we have a sense of humour, that very dark sense of humour that helps us cope. And, ordinary HR services and support sometimes aren't adequate for a journalist and the things that they deal with. You're talking about there being in Baghdad, and I've spoken to people in newsrooms that have had death threats and have had stalkers and have had awful online abuse and various other things. So there's so many dimensions of areas and challenges that the journalists have to face, and sometimes the ordinary support that is there is not adequate for them, and sometimes it makes them feel worse. It is difficult to get through. We are hard-nosed and we are tough, and that's why we do the job, and that's why we keep doing the job, because we have that sense of resilience. But you don't know as a journalist whenever you go into work during the day what you're going to be met with. You don't know if you are going to go to a court story and perhaps the child who has been killed or the inquest that you're going to is the same age as your child, and it will land on you, and you don't know that. So it's about helping people understand, and I have found that I have had to make very tentative, very gentle steps into newsrooms. Firstly, just let's make this conversation. Let's make it a conversation. Let's have the conversation. Suppose, yeah. And even that was very difficult to do. We have had three media strong conferences, and the first one was just about, here's the conversation, and bringing together people to have those real life experiences, to share those real life experiences that they had. The second one was lived experience again, and more people came to it, more people were open to it. This year is about solutions, which is fabulous, the Media Strong Conference in London. People bringing together all their solutions. This is what worked for us. This is what we tried, and it didn't work. It didn't land well with journalists. And it's a coming together of people in a room who are working together to make the newsrooms better. So it has been very difficult, and it remains very difficult, because you are met with resistance, not only from leadership but also from the journalists themselves, who are inside. They're living in a newsroom bubble. You'll know what that's like yourself. You sort of find that the news story is the only thing that matters, and sometimes at the end of the day, or when you're on holiday, or when your nervous system is able to relax, when you think, that was a crazy story, or that was really horrific experience, or when you retire, that happens. It's only when you come out of that newsroom bubble. So it's I've met so much resistance, but it hasn't stopped me. I'm still forging ahead, trying to make a difference. So
good. And the one thing I was thinking about as well when I was thinking about this conversation today was the fact that, yes, obviously we cover very difficult stories. Imagery, I think, is something, we see some very graphic images and things that other people don't see, and that get censored before they, go into the public domain. But also social media, I think, has really, since the start of my career, that's probably been one of the huge changes. The fact that members of the public can have almost direct access with you. And, the whole rhetoric around mainstream media and the criticism that journalists can come under, that's also extremely difficult to take, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's another dimension. When I first started in journalism 25 years ago, we didn't have that kind of pressure. The new journalists are coming up now, and they have to face the pressure of obviously deadlines and doing the traumatic stories and doing all kinds of stories, making sure everything's legally okay, but they also have the pressure of putting that story online, and we know what it's like. Everybody's not going to like your story. You're going to have some criticism on that, but it is that kind of, you've got your phone in your hand, and you've also got all the trolls and all the stalkers and all the people who don't like your story. You're carrying it around in your hand, and that is not good. And a lot of journalists are facing awful online harassment that adds to the stress, and you don't know what to deal with that as well, because your body does not know the difference between a bear coming at you in the street and someone threatening you online. Your body has the same reaction. So again, you're outside the newsroom and you're still connected. You're almost like a cyborg, as my husband always refers to me as a cyborg. When I was a reporter, I always had my phone in my hand. But people have 24-hour access to you, and 24-hour access to you in order to, verbally abuse you or threaten you or make you feel bad or tell you how terrible you are as a journalist or whatever type of insults they want to throw at you. And that also wears you down. It's almost like a Brillo pad to your soul, navigating the wild west that is online these days. So yeah, it's another dimension of stress that journalists have to navigate.
One of the things that I used to see a lot, particularly with people who went to hostile environments, is that they couldn't function in the normal world. They always had to be in those high octane, high adrenaline environments. I mean, do you think there's enough help, particularly for people who do have to go into really uncomfortable environments where even, their very existence or lives, could be put at risk?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the larger newsrooms have really good support there for their folks who go into war zones. And I get where you're coming from. It's very difficult to come back and act as a normal person when your body has been in such high alert for such a long time. You're hyper vigilant, and then you come back into the normal world and you have to go to Sainsbury's to buy your groceries. And that's why they keep going back. That's their default setting, and that is also a trauma response as well. Whenever you seek out that danger, and that when you seek out that danger and that
it's like you're never happy unless you're like almost living on the edge.
You can't settle. You can't settle, and that's. But at the same time, it's not only war zone reporters who face that. You look at the news this week or last week or any week in Northern Ireland and in the UK, when our folks have to go out to hostile rallies, or the things that happen during football or sporting events, which are very traumatic, or there's a lot of anger and hostility in the world. So sometimes a hostile environment is on your doorstep and it's not in some faraway place. So, the local reporters also face very strong hostile environments here, which they have to deal with.
I feel like you're closer to your audience actually when you're working regional level.
Yeah, and it's almost not. It's all of it is awful if you're having to deal with hostile environments. But if it's hostile environments in your own community, in your own city, it feels very personal and it feels very raw. And if you're dealing with that type of thing, and then you're also seeing the same people who maybe perhaps were hostile to you, you're seeing them in your local school or wherever in your community, that's also very hard to take and very hard to manage emotionally as well.
What do female journalists tell you, Leona? Because, again, I suppose I'm drawing on my own experience here, but, I travelled a lot. I did a lot of those hostile environments. I never had a problem with it until I had kids.
Yeah.
And when I had kids, I suddenly, turned to mush. Anything that involved children really did affect me. And it did make me question where I was in my career and whether I was, on the right path. Do you hear that from female journalists?
I do, and I hear that female journalists get an awful time online, an awful time in person. There's a lot, if male journalists get threats as well, but it seems to be a lot of big, strong men threatening women. What you're talking about there, whenever you're saying about having children, I understand that. Whenever you're a journalist, you don't do it deliberately, but you build up barriers, emotional barriers to protect yourself. It's a mental health thing. It's a trauma response, I suppose. Every single journalist does it. They build this kind of barrier in front of them that protects them from anything coming at them. So those stories that you're covering, perhaps about children or about old people being beaten in their homes or awful court stories, there's that barrier there that stops it from landing on you. When you have children yourself, or you have, an elderly mother or any kind of a relative, when you go out and meet that story, sometimes those stories come through that barrier and you can't help that, and they land on you, and that's when things can can affect you, and a story can shake you up and shake you to your core, and you can go back to the newsroom and be really impacted by that, and maybe not sleep, or maybe feel very raw or very upset. Or I remember covering a story years ago. It was a Troubles Legacy story, and it was a lady who lost her husband in an IRA bomb, and I sat in her living, and I had been a journalist maybe 18 years at this stage. I wasn't just, I wasn't green behind the ears or anything. And I went into her house and she told me about her husband, and I was surrounded by her photographs of her husband and of their beautiful life together and of their children. He had actually been kidnapped from that house and that living room. And I remember her telling me about him and how wonderful a man he was, and about their children and stuff. And when I was walking to my car, I don't know why, I thought of my own husband. I thought of, what if that ever happened to my husband? And I got into my car and I cried and I cried and I cried. I didn't cry in front of her because you have to obviously keep professional. But I just remember thinking, what is wrong? There's something wrong with me. I can't do this job. There's obviously something wrong with me. And it's only looking back at that situation now when I think, well, there was nothing wrong with me there. I was just a human being having a normal human response to the very traumatic information that lady was giving me. But I remember thinking, that's, there's something wrong with me. And
that goes back to the hard-nosed thing,
yeah,
doesn't it?
You cannot,
we're meant to be.
You cannot cry. You cannot. Yeah. I don't know how many times people have told me you can't be part of the story. You can't. It's disrespectful to the people if you get upset about it or something like that. And that's that's something that rings in your ears all the time. But I get where you're coming from. It's those barriers. Sometimes they fall, and if particularly when you have children, you think, why am I doing this? Why am I standing at a riot? Or why am I in a hostile environment? Or because your real life kind of seeps into your job, and the lines become blurred. It's tricky. It's tricky to manoeuvre. Yeah.
Now you talk about solutions, and of course that's going to be the focus for the next conference coming up in July. But you've also got a very important event next week at Stormont too, don't you?
Yes, I'm launching my Media Strong Newsroom Wellbeing Charter at Stormont next week, and this is a charter that I developed. I developed it with the help of a lot of people who fed into it. I talked to paramedics about how they deal with their trauma, police how they deal with their trauma, and psychotherapists and journalists obviously, and editors and stuff. And I came up with a charter that I hope that newsrooms would sign up to or support, that it just basically asks them to normalise a conversation around mental health in their newsrooms. It asks them to take it seriously, make it a priority, include training, and recognise basically that journalism is a really tough job, and give all our folks, all the industry, all the journalists that work in the industry, a soft, perhaps soft isn't a right word, a supportive place to land when they come back. So that they know it's okay to talk about such things, that it's okay to have normal human responses to very traumatic things. It's perfectly normal. There's nothing actually wrong with you. And in fact, if you don't have those type of responses, maybe perhaps there's something that needs looked at. But it's a coming together of the industry. I've set it out now. I'm launching it in Belfast. Obviously, this is where I'm from. This is where I learned my trade. This is where I was a journalist. But I'm also bringing it to Dublin. It's going to Leinster House there, and it's also in Westminster as well. We're launching it there and bringing in all the UK industry over there. It's also going. I was talking to people in Canada about it yesterday. They want to incorporate it. It's a very simple thing. It's not binding. It's not legally binding. It's not a policy. It's just a very visible commitment to staff. We take this seriously. We take it seriously now. If you have support already, we take it seriously now. We will continue to take it seriously. We will build and grow along with the people, the experts in that area who are looking at this and trying to make newsrooms better. So it's hoping that everybody just comes together to try and make newsrooms healthier, and so our industry survives and thrives.
It occurs to me as you're speaking, that's a really important conversation for us to have internally, like you say, break down those paradigms, those preconceptions. But I guess it's also really important for other people in other sectors, politicians, the public communities, to hear us having that conversation as well, and again to break down that, you know, that misconception that the journalist is hard-nosed, the journalist shouldn't get involved in the story, that, you know, I suppose it's sort of raising awareness that we are humans as well.
Absolutely, it is raising that awareness. And I speak about this all over the world, and I was at a conference recently. I was asked by medical professionals to talk about newsroom mental health and journalist mental health, and it was a conference about suicide awareness, and it was about the reporting of suicide and the sensitive reporting, and I spoke at that conference, and I told, you know, the journalists, or not the journalists there, I told the audience that were there, who were mainly medical professionals, this is what journalists face. You go out in a day, you might face a hostile environment, you might go to a court case, you might do an inquest, there could be a family tragedy, there could be anything. You don't know what you're going to meet in a day. Journalists put up the barriers. Sometimes that stops all the stuff coming in, but sometimes stops empathy going out as well. So we're a wee bit detached. We can become a wee bit detached from our sources and from our stories, and that can lead to insensitivity in reporting as well. And I was spelling it out for them. Journalists are not monsters. Journalists are not vultures. Journalists are not these, you know, fake news liars, enemies of the people, or anything like that that's sometimes thrown at them. They are human beings trying to do a job, trying to do their job well. They have got the responsibility of holding these people's voices, sharing their stories, shining a light in dark places. And so, but we're also carrying a lot of those stories with us, and we have to put up these barriers. And if we don't get help and we don't recognise that is an actual thing, that we are humans who can become traumatised too, then society will not benefit from that. Society will perhaps be getting insensitive stories, or and it's a vicious circle. It keeps going round and round and round like that. So, but a lot of people don't realise until you actually spell it out to them that journalists face very difficult, challenging circumstances in their work, and that they can be impacted on that. And it's ridiculous that you have to actually say, listen, journalists are human beings too, and they can be impacted by stories negatively, and you know, it can impact their mental health. Imagine having to spell that out to people, but you have to do that, yeah.
My final question to you, Leona, because I've kept you for ages, but you know, do you think things are getting better? I mean, to me, it feels like there's a lot more support in the industry now than there was 20 years ago when I started. But are you seeing that as well through the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I am. I'm seeing the conversation now. The volume of the conversation is raising worldwide, and I'm glad to be part of that. I started this, as I say, 6 years ago, and I did a TED Talk perhaps 4 years ago, and it was kind of, what is she talking about? Why is she talking about newsroom mental health? Since then, I'm not claiming responsibility for any of that, but the conversation has really grown, and more and more people are taking it seriously, and more people are bringing help into their newsrooms as well. And long may it continue, because it's a crucial conversation to have, and we want our industry to do well. We want our journalists to be able to keep telling those important stories. So it's all good. Those conversations are all good.
Well, you're doing fantastic work, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
So that's best of luck, by the way, with the Media Strong campaign. That's it from this edition of the UTV Vodcast. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and share, and you can always catch us up on ITVX. Until next time, bye-bye.